Welcome back, Spikelings, to the Shark Typhoon. Another set's coming out. It's Final Fantasy. Now, normally I go over the cards and I tell you which ones are going to be interesting in the context of Modern. This time, though, I'm going to be just talking about Universes Beyond. Is it good? Is it cringe? Find out after this ad break. Actually, that just looked pretty good to me. Let's talk about the cards. My number one pick from this set is really close. I think Lightning Army of One and the next 5 cards are all really similar in power level, so don't take too much stock in the order this time. Lightning is a pretty crazy card, largely due to this card, Arena of Glory. This is something that I've been doing for the last year. It's something I'll probably be doing for the foreseeable future, is evaluating red creatures with the context of them having haste. Arena of Glory is just a card that's really easy to include 3-4 copies of in your modern decks, and it's very, very easy to give creatures like Lightning haste. And I think this could be helpful for your own card evaluations when you're thinking about standard versus modern. Just kind of imagine that there's a line of text here that says haste, and that's been something that's been helping me some in recent sets. First Strike, Trample, Lifelink, Haste, 3-2, and it has this ability: when lightning deals combat damage to a player until your next turn, if a source would deal damage to that player or a permanent that player controls, it deals double that damage instead. So it's very important to note that because this has First Strike, if you're going to hit your opponent with it in a combat step, other creatures you control, like a Guide of Souls or a Johnny Token, will deal double damage on that same turn, and they'll deal double damage on the next turn. I also really like that by herself, if you give her haste, she deals 3 damage the turn she enters, and then it's 6 trample lifelink the next turn. So that's a 9-point life swing over 2 turns, which is very, very good for a single 3-mana card. I'm also interested in trying Lightning in a Boros Burn Shell. I've tried a couple Arena of Glory Flage builds of Burn that I think are a bit slower, but a bit better at not losing to Boros energy every single time, and I think Lightning plays into that plan really well. Making your burn spells deal double damage is also really crazy. Lava Spikes that deal 6, Lightning Bolts that deal 6, Boros Charms that deal 8 are going to kill your opponent basically every single time you untap after you've hit them with Lightning. Also in Prowess could be good. Like you hit your opponent and then you Mutagen Growth your non-First Strike Prowess creature and you do crazy, crazy damage. I could see Lightning just finishing games like that in Prowess. Very exciting card, a lot of promise. It's possible that the card just ends up being too fragile to instant speed removal, but again, thinking about this card with haste, usually haste creatures are kind of allowed to be a bit more fragile. Tifa Lockhart is also pretty promising. Aggro 2-drop. Green, trample, 1-2, landfall. And landfall is always a mechanic to look out for in these standard sets because in standard, they're balanced around 1 land entering a turn. In modern, with fetch lands, you almost always get to get double the triggers. So whenever a land enters, you double Tifa's power until the end of turn. So this kills on turn 3 very, very easily with almost any pump spell you're going to play in Modern. So like Scale Up would make Tifa 6 power, double that twice up to 24 trample, kill on turn 3. There are plenty of pump spells that give +4/+4, which is 20 damage exactly. There's a few more that go even bigger, like Become Immense. It's going to be very easy to just untap with Tifa and kill. Another thing that's interesting is now that we have Green Sun Zenith in the format, it's not too tough to play like a bunch of Hierarchs, Noble Hierarch, Ignoble Hierarch, which also can, you can get 1 landfall trigger, attack, get exalted, fetch, get another landfall trigger to kind of increase Tifa's power even more. But if you're playing 4 Noble Hierarchs, 4 Ignoble Hierarchs, you can turn 2 Green Sun Zenith for Tifa. Also, if you're playing those Hierarchs, you can go turn 1 Hierarch, turn 2 Tifa, hold up a protection spell so you don't just lose to removal. And so I'm definitely very interested in trying to play an infectless infect-style deck where you're just dealing normal combat damage. I have done this a few times. That was actually the first deck I ever streamed, was a Dreadhorde Arcanist deck that was trying to like play Scale Up. Sometimes you like flashback Become Immense because you've scaled up your creature and it just deals crazy amounts of damage. I don't know if I would go like the Dreadhorde Arcanist route with this, but there's definitely something to be said for just playing much higher quality creatures, because at the end of the day, Blighted Agent, Glistener Elf, they're 1/1s. They're very, very fragile. They don't have Blighted Agent does have unblockable, but this has trample. Glistener Elf gets blocked a lot, and just dealing your opponent damage sometimes is much less of a headache. Also, because Tifa just requires 1 pump spell to kill your opponent plus a fetch land usually, this allows you to play a lot less pump spells, which I think in theory can increase your deck's consistency a lot. I will say, Modern is a format that will have a lot of resilience to a card like this. I would really love for a card like this to be good and popular. I feel like it would help gameplay to have like a really linear pump spell based green aggro deck exist again. Rydia, Summoner of Mist, is a 2-mana Gruul 1/2. Has landfall. Whenever a land you control enters, you can discard a card. If you do, draw a card. This by itself is already really interesting and powerful, I think. Just this doesn't exist. A landfall card for 2 mana that's allowing you to filter through your deck really quickly, discard stuff for value, churn through your deck, is already very interesting. It is way more interesting with this next ability, Summon. For X, you can return target Saga card with mana value X from your graveyard to the battlefield with a finale counter, and it gains haste. Activate only as a source. This is, of course, mostly interesting with Urza Saga. Your ability to go play Rydia, next turn, land, discard Saga, tap, for 0 mana, return Saga, trigger Rydia's landfall trigger again, rummage again, maybe trigger other landfall triggers. That seems like a really powerful play pattern. It also plays okay with other sagas, of course. There are very few other playable sagas. I've already trash-talked Fable of the Mirror Breaker this video. I don't really like that card in Modern that much anymore, but you probably do have to pair it with Rydia to give some redundancy to the effect, so you can go discard Fable, return it. I think this card's very powerful. I like that it is like going to be good in some Faithless Looting Shells where you're discarding cards for value. Maybe you play this in like a Jund or green-red Monument to Endurance build. I like that you can green sun for Rydia, so like if you're really, really built around it, you can get it more often. This card has a lot of text. It's really relevant, and I think it's quite powerful. I'm kind of optimistic that maybe like a Jund Saga style deck could come back, like with this card being like a powerful card advantage filtering engine that is letting you actually overpower stuff like Boros. I have high hopes for this card. It is very, very good with Urza Saga, which also is getting a buff because Blood Moon isn't killing Urza Saga anymore, and just go ahead and look into that. I don't want to get too deep into that in this video, but I think this is going to be quite strong. I think Vivi is the card that I've seen people the most excited about, and I do think this card is pretty strong. It's a 3-mana Izzet Wizard, a 0/3. It has an ability whenever you cast a non-creature spell, you put a counter on Vivi, and it deals 1 damage to each opponent. And you can activate an ability once a turn that gives you X mana in any combination of blue and red, and that part is very relevant. Where X is equal to Vivi's power, and you can only do this once a turn, and you can't do it on your opponent's turn to like 0 mana counter spell the turn you play Vivi, which would be a little busted. So obviously Viva's really good with the 0 mana artifacts that exist in the format. Mishra's Bauble, Mox Opal, Mox Amber. Mox Amber especially nice because you can just go Vivi, Amber, and play a 2-drop like an Expressive Iteration, for instance. I'm very excited about the fact that you can add any combination of colors, where this just is going to make it a lot easier to go like Vivi, 0-drop, cantrip, and then play one of the really powerful cards like a Flame of Anor, like an Iteration, without any worry about not being able to play for the hybrid costs. Vivi, notably also, of course, is a wizard, and just the ability to play this and a Flame in the same turn, just really swing things in your favor, I think is very, very promising. Izzet is an archetype that really has no shortage of card draw effects, but sometimes can get kind of choked up on mana. And this card just seems like it really fits quite well in like the Izzet Wizards archetype. I recently was working on a artifact-focused Izzet Wizards build kind of in preparation for this card existing, and that deck went pretty well. I think it's going to slot right in, and I'm super excited to cast it. I also really like this card, Sephiroth, Fabled Soldier. If any of the Final Fantasy Vorthoses can tell me why this word is all caps, I'd really love to know. It's kind of like just a better Blood Artist that can go in a few different strategies in Modern: War and Soul Trader combo, Samwise combo, or Yawgmoth combo, or possibly like some kind of blend between 2 of these 3 cards. Lately, we've been seeing some Sam Yawgmoth combo decks. I've been kind of secretly working on some Soul Trader Yawgmoth decks, and I think Sephiroth could be some part of the glue for these strategies. So it's a 3-mana 3/3. Whenever it enters or attacks, you can sack another creature. If you do, draw a card. These creature-based combo decks all have lots of good stuff to sacrifice for value. And it is also a Blood Artist. So it's really cool that this is a bit like much beefier than these effects usually are. It can generate card advantage when you're sacking stuff like Young Wolf and Gravecrawler and Stitcher Supplier and Cauldron Familiar. And it also just says when any creature dies, an opponent loses a life and you gain a life. And then if that has happened 4 times in a turn, it transforms into a 5/5 flyer when you get an emblem with that effect. Whenever a creature dies, you gain a life, and they lose a life. So if you get a permanent Blood Artist effect in play, if you can trigger this, is really, really big deal for these kind of decks. And also, if you ever get to attack with this thing, you can sack any number of creatures and draw that many cards. So it's just like a super duper version of the front effect. And as a Chord of Calling target, as an Unearth target, as a Birthing Ritual target, in these combo decks, you're almost always going to play one, I think. In my opinion, Sephiroth is going to be like a definite staple one of in these builds. I think it's possible that it ends up becoming a bigger player. This card is just very powerful. It fits these plans really well. It allows you to grind through some of the more interactive decks in a way that like Warren Soul Trader and Sam combo kind of need. I think Yawgmoth is already kind of grindy, but like Samwise and Soul Trader are pretty fast combo decks, which is good. But they have a hard time with the interactive decks, and Sephiroth can, I think, help. And so I'm excited for this card. There's a good chance it ends up being a little bit of a breakout too. There's just so much text on it. So we already showed off this pretty powerful Izzet Wizard, and now we have an Izzet Human Warlock. That is also, I think, going to be a pretty nice build around in Modern. It says whenever you scry or surveil, draw a card, and it's very notably a 1/4, so it doesn't die to Bolt, sometimes doesn't die to Discharge, doesn't die to Flage. And of course, this is a big deal in Modern, where any fetch land can just turn into a surveil land. Your ability to just play this, fetch, surveil, draw a card is going to be a pretty powerful source of card advantage, I think. Also, it turns Preordain into Scry 2, Draw 2, and it also turns Dragon Rage's Channeler into every time you cast a non-creature spell, surveil 1, draw a card. It's very powerful. I think there may be a few other Scry and Surveil cards you might want to pair this with, but I think for the most part, this is just going to be enough. Fetch lands, Surveil lands, Preordain, Channeler. Back when Underworld Breach was legal, I had a Underworld Breach combo deck that used Enhanced Surveillance instead of Grinding Station. This card would have been really sweet in that. Breach is now banned, but I think as just a card advantage engine in an Izzet shell, it could be pretty powerful. And I do think it's kind of interesting that this is not a wizard, so like, and also Channeler is not a wizard, so it's like maybe you have Izzet Wizards with Vivi and Flame of Nor, and then you have like Izzet Matoya Channeler. Maybe this build is more aggressive, maybe not, but maybe this build is just like the non-artifact based version because you want to play artifacts with Vivi. But I'm excited for this one. I think it's cool that we could have two different Izzet decks, and I'll also say that Modern has been kind of sorely lacking good Izzet decks. That's been, in my opinion, kind of a soft spot of the format. You've got a kind of a good Dimir interactive deck, but I've been missing playing some blue and red spells. Well, I mean, there's Izzet Prowess, but, you know, a blue and red deck where I can counter stuff and burn stuff and draw a lot of cards. Okay, I want to talk about these two cards together. We've got Cloud, which is kind of like a Stoneforge Mystic, costs double white, 2/1, but both of them search your library for an equipment, put it into your hand. Instead of being able to cheat an equipment into play like Stoneforge Mystic can, and admittedly that's becoming less and less relevant as the best equipment in Modern is Quarry Steelcutter, which you just cast that bad boy. It has another ability. As long as Cloud is equipped, if an ability of Cloud or an equipment attached triggers, that ability triggers an additional time. This is already good with a few equipment that I've been playing recently. Like, of course, Quarry Steelcutter is good. You can, like, equip this to Cloud for 0 mana with a Pure Steel Paladin or maybe a Sigarda's Aid. And then when you cast that second spell to get your Monk token, you get 2 of them. You can also put a Spear of Leonidas on Cloud. This is something I've been doing with Cassandra from Assassin's Creed, and it's been going pretty well. And you get to choose 2 modes. That's kind of nice. But Cloud also pairs really, really well with the sword that I presume he's holding in this picture, the Buster Sword. It's kind of funny that this gives +3/+2 instead of the normal +2/+2 that swords in Magic give. It's also like not exactly like a normal Magic the Gathering sword where it doesn't give protection, but funny enough, I kind of think it's just better than any like Sword of Fire and Ice, Sword of Feast and Famine we've ever seen. It says, when an equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, you draw a card, and then you may cast a spell from your hand with mana value less than or equal to that damage without paying its mana cost. In Magic the Gathering, drawing cards and casting spells for free is a good thing to be doing. So this is definitely something we want to be looking at. And like those two things obviously pair really well together because you get to draw the card, and a lot of times you're just going to be able to cast like any spell that costs 5 or less immediately. Now, doing this in like a normal hammer shell, I don't think is going to be as interesting. Like when you are when your whole deck is like trying to kill your opponent in one turn, your deck is very low, and you have a lot of like little cheap stuff like you know Ornithopters and Mox Opals and redundant Sigarda's Aids. This might not be as powerful in Hammer. So even though I probably will try to play this in like the red-white Hammer build I've been playing, and obviously casting extra spells for free isn't bad, I'm kind of like optimistic that I could play this in like a blue-white or a Jeskai Stoneblade style mid-range deck, where I hit my opponent with this and I play a Lorien Revealed for 0 mana, and I draw 4 total cards from that, and then I end up drawing into a Solitude, and I cast a Solitude. Just going a bit bigger with it because this card does incentivize you for going a bit bigger. That sounds super duper fun. I'm kind of optimistic. You could maybe also play this in Boros mid-range. A little bit of a equipment shell with some combination of Cloud, Stoneforge Mystic, Fervent Champion, Cassandra, this kind of stuff, and just the normal Boros mid-range shell. And that deck's really good when you draw cards and cast spells for free. So I'm optimistic. I think you'll usually play these 2 cards together, so I wanted to talk about them together. Maybe Buster Sword ends up being a bust, but Cloud at the very least is going to be like your like Stoneforge Mystic. You know, maybe 5 through 8. Maybe you play 3/3. Maybe you play 3/4, 3/2, 4/2, something like that. But like, you know, extra copies of Stoneforge Mystic will be playable in some of these hammer style decks. Esper Origins, I think, is a pretty interesting card. I think of every single card from the set, this is the one I'm having the hardest time evaluating because it does a lot. It's a 2-mana sorcery that says Surveil 2, gain 2 life. That part's not that good. But if you cast it from your graveyard with flashback for 4 mana, you get to do that, Surveil 2, gain 2 life, but then you get to make this Saga creature. The Saga creature is a 4/4 enchantment creature. The first mode, you reveal the top card of your library. If it's a permanent card, you put it into your hand. So usually you're going to be able to go Surveil 2, put a permanent on top, and then effectively draw that card. The next turn, it makes 2 mana, and the turn after that, other creatures gain +2/+2 and trample. This is, I think, a lot of value from the graveyard. Very notably also, this is a Faithless Looting format now. Faithless Looting has seen play in some decks, like Hollow One. There's some Reanimator builds that use it. But for the most part, like Faithless Looting is an incredibly powerful card that exists in Modern that doesn't see that much play. And of course, what I do on this channel is when I feel like there are cards like this, I really like to dive deep into them. And Esper Origins could be an interesting shell in either like a combo looting deck or maybe a more grindy Faithless Looting deck. Notably, the Saga creature is something you can discard for value, and it has 4 power for Fanatic of Ronus. Fanatic of Ronus, every time a 4 power creature gets printed, gets a little bit better. It's a very powerful mana dork that doesn't have a lot of support. This is a little bit more support. Also notably, Fanatic has Eternalize, and this comes back from the graveyard, so there's like a little bit of an extra element of these cards getting a lot of value from the graveyard. Could you play Esper Origins in like a Shifting Woodland Faithless Looting Omniscience combo deck, where you're using this as kind of like a plan B that allows you to beat down and outgrind interactive opponents, or potentially something that's just helping you enable your combo with the Surveil 2, although that's honestly not a very powerful way to help enable the combo. Could you play it in a more grindy shell? I'm not sure. I'm having a very hard time evaluating it, but I think, again, in the Faithless Looting format, in the Fanatic format, this is a card I'm interested in. This is a card that I think is going to take some time to find the right home, and I hope we can find it, or potentially, maybe it'll come to us later with new cards. I've been eagerly awaiting the release of this card, Sazh Chocobo. Esther, how do you say this?
Chocobo.
Sazh's Chocobo. It's a 1-mana 0/1 landfall creature that says whenever a land you control enters, you put a counter on this creature. This card I think is a really perfect fit for an old brew I was working on a while ago that I've been wanting to update, but I've been waiting for this card to get released because it was spoiled so long ago before I play it. I have like this landfall aggro deck that uses like Springheart Nantuko. Sometimes you put this on your Reckless Pyrosurfer, which gives everything a battle cry buff. Sometimes you copy your Iridescent Vine Lasher, and this card is also just a really good aggressive 1-mana creature for this archetype. It could go in a few other different shells. We'll talk about the birds later. It also does like Hardened Scales kind of well. Every few sets, we get one more piece for maybe a non-artifact based Hardened Scales deck. This could be a step in the right direction, like a 1-mana Bristly Bill. But I like this card. I'm excited for it, and I hope it's good. Amulet Titan is potentially getting a couple of green sunnable creature upgrades in the set. Please don't cyberbully me in the comments, Amulet Titan Discord. We've got Traveling Chocobo, which is a 3-mana 3/2. You may look at the top card of your library at any time. You can play lands or bird spells from the top. That's kind of nice in the Titan deck, but you would mainly want to play it for this next ability. If a land or bird you control entering the battlefield causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. Kind of wordy, but what this effectively does in a modern Amulet Titan deck is double your Amulet of Vigor triggers. Your lands are lands triggering permanents on the play. And so a green sunnable card that doubles your Amulet Vigor triggers, lets you find lands off the top of your library, could be something you play in Amulet Titan. You also might play this card, the Wandering Minstrel. It has a lot of text here. I'm not going to read it. You're not going to use it. It's basically just blue green 1/3 lands you control enter untapped. So this is a green sunnable spelunking type effect that allows your Green Sun Zeniths, your Summer's packs to be an amulet. That might be a really big deal. It might not be such a big deal. I'm having a hard time evaluating it. I certainly expect the Amulet Titan players to figure it out. I'm not 100% sure if these are going to slot in, but they're definitely options. And I'm interested to see if they find a home. I don't think it's going to be a huge deal either way with these cards. I don't think it really moves the needle a lot on the archetype necessarily, but it's kind of cool. Okay, so we've talked about a couple birds. There's like a bit of a bird theme in Final Fantasy. I have been daydreaming since this card was spoiled, Bartz and Boko, about a Birds of Paradise Kindred deck where you're just flooding the board with birds and it's a viable modern strategy. I don't think we got there in playable birds, but we didn't get that far away either. So like we've got this card, 5 mana 4/3 affinity for birds. When this enters, each other bird you control deals damage equal to its power to target creature an opponent controls. So if you have 3 birds in play, this card is very often going to be like a 2 mana 4/3 kill a creature. That's pretty good. You've got this card, Choco, Creature of Paradise. It's a 4 mana 3/5. This card is also kind of green sunnable for. Whenever one or more birds you control attack, you look at that many cards from your library, you put one of those cards into your hand, and then all of the lands in play. And a lot of the birds have landfall triggers like this one, and it says whenever a land you control enters, this card gets +1/+0 in turn. So like most of them have this, and so like this puts a lot of lands, you trigger all your landfall creatures. We've already touched on this one. Obviously, this card is more powerful in a bird shell. We can play birds from the top. We've got the little 1-drop that we talked about. You would play it in this bird Kindred deck. This card's also like kind of good. It's a 2-mana enchantment. When it enters, you get a 2/2 bird with landfall, +1/+1 on landfall. And if you have 4 or more birds, you get another 2/2 landfall bird. But this one also searches any land and puts it into play. It's kind of interesting that it's any land. It's like a crop rotation that you don't have to sacrifice a land. So this is 6 cards. They're all like a little weak. It's not like any of these are super duper crazy. This kind of deck would just get chewed up and spit out at the moment from Boros and Prowess. But there is, I think, the start of a shell here. We have a few other birds that exist in the format, like Birds of Paradise, Unsettled Mariner, Kishel Skimmer. I haven't quite like scraped the barrel looking at all the birds yet, but I will do my due diligence to see if there is a deck here. It's my impression that there's not quite going to be something here. But like if there was another set with bird synergies that existed, and like maybe you could go more in on Green Sun Zenith or Collected Company in that shell, then I would love to play some birds. I think we're not quite there yet, but these cards are all like cards I would maybe play if that shell existed. And I'll do a double check. I'll make sure that there's not a shell here before I abandon the bird project. This card's kind of cool. Venat, Heart of something. It's a 3 mana 3/3. Whenever you cast a legendary spell, you draw a card, and this ability triggers once each turn. This is very similar to one of my favorite cards, Basim bin Ishak. Both of these, legendary spell, draw a card, once a turn. What's cool about this is a white card, so like maybe you would play like an Esper build around both, where you're drawing a lot of cards each turn. Maybe that this could open up like a mono white or black white kind of shell instead. But in general, this effect is really strong. I should have put this on the screen, but also Felia, notably, is a white instant speed legend that's pretty good and playable. So like if you play Venat, like you can draw a card on your turn with a Mox, and on your opponent's turn you can cast a Felia and draw a card. That's kind of nice. And also, if you're playing a lot of Moxen, this ability that's very expensive, Hero Sundering, might actually come up. It's 7 mana. You tap Venat, and then you exile target non-land permanent. I really like that this always exiles the permanent, even if the transform doesn't happen. At least that's my impression. A lot of the problem with these transform cards from Final Fantasy is that if you spend a lot of mana to transform it, then your opponent can just use a removal spell in response, blank all that mana, and the game kind of ends. But this like always gets to exile the permanent, which at the very least won't be as much of a blowout. And again, this is going to be more usable with the combination of these Moxen, even if you're not going to activate that often. But on the backside, it's a 4/4 indestructible. It looks like it has flying. It doesn't have flying. And at the beginning of combat on your turn, you put a counter on a creature you control, a different creature, and if it's legendary, you draw a card. And that's kind of nice. You do lose your cast a legendary spell, draw a card ability, so keep that in mind in your sequencing. I would be kind of excited to build an Esper, Basim, Venat, Felia Shell. To me, that sounds very, very fun, and I'm optimistic we can get it together. Zach Fair, is this the Buster Sword? Whose sword is the Buster Sword? Zach is kind of an interesting card. 1 mana, basically a 1/2 because it enters with a counter. And I just kind of like this ability. Sacrifice Zach Fair, target creature gains indestructible, and then you put the counters from Zach on that creature, and then you attach an equipment that was attached to Zach onto that creature. Now I think that this is going to be more of like a Agatha's Soul Cauldron deck where you get to like maintain all your counters and cauldron this ability, then every creature gets this ability, and you're moving the counters around and you're putting them in a walking ballista. Or maybe you're using this as like a protection spell, your Basking Brood-Scale deck, and it's like when you put a counter from Zach on your Brood-Scale, you get a counter too. I think that is kind of interesting. I think you're going to be a lot more likely to use Zach in that way than in like a Hammer Time. I think you're mostly going to ignore the equipment part. Although I guess, now that I'm thinking about it, Blade of the Blood Chief is an equipment and deck, so I guess that line of text is actually more relevant than I thought in this kind of shell. It's also a 1 mana playable legend, so like that is relevant as Mox Amber just becomes better and better with each passing set. But I don't know, I like this card. I think it's a cool effect. I don't think it's going to be a big game changer, but I think I'd play it in this kind of shell. I have played a Hardened Scales Brood-Scale deck that I think is like a little bit better against Boros than the normal Brood-Scale build, so like maybe we'll try it there. Cecil Dark Knight is another card that I kind of like. It's a 1 mana 2/3 Death Touch legend, Mox Amber, blah blah blah. When it deals damage, you lose life equal to the amount of damage it deals, and then if your life total is less than or half of your starting life total, you untap Cecil and transform it into a 4/4 that says when it attacks, other attacking creatures gain indestructible until end of turn. Now, what's cool about Cecil is, in theory, it should be pretty easy to transform it on turn 2. If you have 2 fetch lands, that's 6 damage to yourself. Cecil deals yourself 2 damage. And then if you just cast a Cycle Street Wraith or cast a Thoughtseize, that'll put you to 10 on turn 2, and this will transform into a 4/4 lifelinker. Now, is that good? I think it's fine. I think it's totally fine if this is your turn 1 play and you do this on turn 2. It's not necessarily like much better than like Guide of Souls and Ocelot Pride. It doesn't necessarily work with those cards really well. It doesn't also work very well in like a Death Shadow Shell, right? Because you're making a 4/4 lifelinker. You don't really want to play that in your Death Shadow Shell, but you're also wanting to pay a lot of life. So that's awkward. So like while I think this is a powerful enough sequence for me to want to put into my modern deck, I don't know that it's necessarily going to be a particularly good thing to do compared to other things you could do. And that's something that's really important during these set evaluations, is sometimes you identify something that's like kind of powerful enough to see modern play, but just kind of like less powerful or not synergistic enough. But we'll figure it out. There's like definitely enough here to explore. Diamond Weapon is a pretty hard card to evaluate. It's definitely another one of these cards that's a lot better in modern than it would be in standard. It's a 9 mana artifact creature elemental, also legendary, and it costs 1 less for each permanent in your graveyard. Modern is the fetchland format. You're going to have a lot of permanents in your graveyard. You also get to play Malevolent Rumble in most of your green decks, and you can potentially dump a lot of permanents in your graveyard really quickly to cast this card quite fast. It is an 8/8, prevent all damage that would be dealt to it. If you cast an 8/8 reach for 2 mana, prevent all damage to it. That's pretty good. I do not know where I would put this card. I don't know if it is going to fit anywhere. It's an artifact. It's very weird. This card is very weird. You could play with Emery. Emery puts a lot of stuff in your yard. Might be good enough. It might not be. It's kind of like a weird Murktide Regent. I really wish it wasn't legendary. If it wasn't legendary, I do feel like this card would be just much better. I think being able to just play multiple of these at once as like your big build around payoff would be really nice, but it's not. And I'm definitely gonna kind of more so I think have this like in the back of my mind. Like maybe I would play it in with like the red green card where like I'm playing Rumble and I'm playing Rydia and I'm playing Saga and I'm like looting and I'm putting stuff away, and I have like 1 or 2 of this card in my Jund Saga deck. But it's kind of, again, like kind of like Cecil. That's why I have it down here. Kind of like Zach's. Like I like it. Is it gonna fit anywhere? Is it gonna be better to do than other stuff? We'll find out over at twitch.tv/aspiringspike. Jill, Shiva's dominant, probably a little bit out of the range of where you want to be. It's kind of like a Mana War effect, although it is much better. When it enters, you can turn up to 1 other non-land permanent to its owner's hand. So your permanents, your opponent's stuff. You can flicker this with Felia. You can return it with Sabine's Reclamation. You can ephemerate it. It's a legendary creature from Moxamber. And it also has an upside of spending 5 mana and transforming into this Saga. It's a 4/5. It makes creatures unblockable for the first 2 turns. And it taps all lands your opponents control. And then it turns back into this card, Jill. So, in general, the problem with these bounce effects are that they you can kind of burn out. You can kind of flood out. They don't give you card advantage. They don't necessarily advance your board state as much as you would need them to be. But this one also has this like 5 mana mode where you can really pop off with it. I'll say I think this card I would think would be good in standard. Of course, I don't play a lot of standard, so maybe I'm off about that. But I have reached for these kind of effects every once in a while. Like there was a time where I was doing really well, and this is like pre-MH3, but I was doing, I think it might have been pre-MH2, but there's like a 2/1 Aether Channeler where you could like draw a card, or you could make a bird, or you could bounce something. And I like that card, and is this card better than that one? I think so, especially because of the 2 toughness. It would be like a very specific metagame that I reached for Jill. I don't think this card is great, but I just kind of like it, and I would really enjoy if Modern was a place where I could play cards like this. Okay, very minor, but Phoenix Down is a 1 mana artifact. It has this ability: 2 mana, tap, exile this artifact, choose 1, return a creature card with mana value 4 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped, or you can exile spirit, zombie, or skeleton. I imagine this will not come up almost ever, but I think as a one of in your Bright Glass Gearhulk decks, and we played a few Bright Glass Gearhulk decks that have gone pretty well, this could be a good tutor target where you grab this, and if your opponent kills your Gearhulk, you just play this, return your Gearhulk, tutor 2 more things, and you just bury your opponents in card advantage. So I think you may want to play this sometimes in your Gearhulk decks and never otherwise. Jeht, Reluctant Guardian, is one of these cards that like you wouldn't think about twice if it weren't for Arena of Glory, but you give it haste, it's pretty okay. It's like a 4 mana, 4/3 menace. When it deals combat damage to a player, you transform it into this card. The first 2 modes are each opponent discards a card and you draw a card, so you get to do that twice, and then each opponent sacrifices 2 creatures of their choice. So if you haste this with Arena, you hit them for 4, it immediately transforms, they discard a card, you draw a card, that happens again, you hit them for 7, and then they sack 2 creatures. Pretty good for 4 mana. I would never play this if it wasn't for Arena of Glory. The 3 toughness is pretty tough. I probably won't actually end up casting this card, but I think if I was already playing like a Rakdos Arena of Glory deck, and there are a few cards that you would kind of want to do this with, like Deathclaw, Dreadhorde Arcanist, like Rakdos specific cards that are good with Arena. Maybe I would play one of these. It's at least something I want to put on your radar and just put in your head. Fire Magic maybe isn't the most interesting, but I do think it's going to be like the premier anti-Boros sideboard card and maybe replace Pyroclasm. 1 mana instant, deals 1 damage to each creature. 3 mana instant, 2 mana to each creature. This is just very effective at cleaning up either little cats and Ragavans, or for 3 mana, Johnny tokens and Seasoned Pyromancers and Fable tokens and Seasoned Pyromancer stuff, all that, everything basically besides Flage. And for 6 mana, you could deal 3 damage to each creature, and you're basically never going to do that. This is just cheap, it's efficient. The instant speed is really, really important, because like against Boros, being able to like kill their stuff, untap, and then get ahead on board is super important. And for the foreseeable future, if I was going to play Pyroclasm in my sideboard, I'm going to be playing Fire Magic. There are 5 adventure lands, which are pretty cool to me. Like, so you can do the spell side, Reactor Raid or Mage Siege. You can sack an artifact or creature if you do draw 2 cards, like a Deadly Dispute, or you can make a wizard that says whenever you cast a non-creature spell, it deals 1 damage to each opponent. And then after you've played those, you can play these as a land. And I don't know, that's pretty interesting, I think. The fact that like you have lands that are like actual 2-for-1s, although they're very slow and they intertapped, it's very interesting. In Modern especially, we're like so stretched to the limit right now when it comes to utility lands. Like, not only do you have so many options between like Aurora and like you have the MDFCs like Sink into the Super, and you have Beseiju, and you have some creature lands like say like Den of the Bugbear, that's a good card that sees almost no play, really no play. And then also like these kind of cards, they compete with every fetch land. Not only do fetch lands enable stuff like Delirium, but every fetch land can just surveil for you now with the surveil lands. So despite these being good utility lands, and I do expect I'm going to put them in my deck every once in a while, Modern has so many options for utility lands, and I think it's kind of good, at least in the context of Modern. I'm not sure about Standard. I think it's good that we have access to these. It's good that, to some extent, it's good that fetch lands are just so nuts that you can print really good cards like this and be like, I don't know. And I don't know. Again, these won't be big players. I think. I don't think the other three are particularly interesting. You might play them, but I think these two are more interesting. But just want to highlight these. Maybe you'll get to put them in your deck. I am kind of interested in playing this card in Wizards specifically. Just in a turn, make a wizard that's dealing you damage. Play a land. Might play 1 or 2. I might play this in some cookbook decks. I'm excited. Emet-Selch Unsundered is a card that I really wish it was good. 14 cards to transform is just too many, I think. It's a 3-mana 2/4 vigilance. When it enters or attacks, you draw a card and discard a card. This isn't like the worst by itself, of course, but when you compare it to other 3-drops you could be playing in Dimir, like Psychic Frog, Oculus, Kaito, it's like, I don't know, dude. It is really crazy if it transforms. If at the beginning of your upkeep, if there are 14 or more cards in your graveyard, you can transform it into a 6/6 vigilance. During your turn, you can play cards from your graveyard, and then it has like this Yawgmoth's Will style effect. If a card or token to be put into your graveyard from anywhere, exile it instead. So it's to get this effect, Hades, Sorcerer Eld, and a loot for 3 mana. That's very, very good. This is not something that's going to happen before like turn 6 usually. So like I'm kind of torn on like if I even want to explore this or not, because I just think 14 is way too many. But the payoff is really, really there. So I will work on this. I will try to figure out like is this worth supporting? If it is worth supporting, is it powerful enough to really be good? And I hope so, because this card is sweet, but I think it's 14 is so much. There is one more equipment that's pretty interesting. Summoner's Grimoire. It is a 4-mana equipment. It makes your creature a shaman, and then it says when it attacks, you put a creature from your hand onto the battlefield. And if it's an enchantment creature, it's also tapped and attacking, which won't be that relevant in Modern. I do think it's kind of interesting that you could go like turn 2 Stoneforge Mystic, turn 3, put this into play, cast a Fervent Champion, and attack and put something big into play. Now, to me, it doesn't seem like that's going to be a better way to put something big into play than like a Neoform or a Goryo's Vengeance or a Through the Breach, you know? Like this doesn't seem like how I'm going to cheat Atraxa into play. But it is a way to cheat Atraxa into play, so I think it's worth talking about, and I'll probably end up like building this deck off stream and just thinking it's probably not a good direction. In 3 years from now, 2 years, 6 months, we might be talking about this card a lot, From Father to Son. 2 mana, search your library for a vehicle card, reveal it, and put it into your hand. If the spell was cast from your graveyard, like if you Snapcastered it, then you can put that card onto the battlefield instead and then shuffle. So, of course, you play this card, you snap it back. If you were to put if you were to just like put something like Archon of Cruelty into play or Atraxa into play for this would definitely be worth talking about. The best thing is Parhelion. There's like another one that like crews for 3 and has lifelink as like a 7/7. There just isn't a crazy vehicle to put into play. You can't even crew this very easily. There is not a crazy vehicle to put into play in Modern. I don't recommend building around this card now. Just keep this card in mind, and one day they may print something really crazy and like, oh my gosh, I'm snap casting they turned Archon of Cruelty into a bicycle. I can't believe it. It's perfect, you know, but until they turn Archon of Cruelty into a bicycle, just keep this card in the back of your mind. And that's all the cards I wanted to talk about. I think it's going to be a fun set. Nothing that seems like it's going to be too broken. Everything is all of the cards basically are legendary creatures. All of the cards that are interesting in this set are legendary creatures. Blah, 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 Commander. I'm excited. I think it's going to be a fun set. I think also, like, really importantly, all of these cards look really fun. Like, I think none of them are too scary. They look fun to build around. They look fun to play. And really all of them, I think, are adding equity to archetypes that need equity that will make gameplay better, with the exception of Lightning buffing Boros. With the exception of Lightning buffing Boros, I'm excited to play Cloudbuster Sword. I'm excited to play Matoya and Surveil and draw a lot of cards. I'm excited to play like creature-based combo decks with this. I'm excited to play Wizards. I'm excited to do this stuff. This stuff looks really cool. I'm excited to play like an Infect style deck. I'm excited to work on this. It's like, I think it's going to be a very fun set to work on. I hope you'll join me. I'll be streaming over at twitch.tv/AspiringSpike. The VODs will be posted here on this YouTube channel. Thank you. Love you. See you there. Bye.